Coming up on Full Cycle, there's some argy-bargy in Norway. An embarrassing moment that'll be hard to live down.
Oh, the bell's going, he does.
He thinks he's won.
Oh, dear.
He thinks he's won.
That was a bit embarrassing.
And a triathlon star makes his final transition. Hello and welcome to Bike Bug Full Cycle. It's been another big week in the world of cycling. And of course the Tour of Spain, the Vuelta a España is about to get going. And David McKenzie, I know you're chomping at the bit to get over there.
I am chomping at the bit. My suitcase is outside the studio, ready to head straight to the airport. So chop chop, let's get onto it.
Let's get onto it. Well, before we talk about road cycling, let's have a look at what happened over in Canada at Whistler. It was Crankworx. It's the festival of mountain biking, and Tracy Hanna from Cairns is doing really well.
I want to say it was sick, awesome, fast, but it was really hard, physical. My legs hurt, my lungs hurt, but I love this race. It's like one of my favourite races in Whistler.
So it was the Gabanzo downhill that she won, 7-kilometre downhill race. She's got the other normal downhill still to come. But as I said, it's a festival of mountain biking Macca, dual slalom, lots of thrills and spills. It's a fantastic event, Crankworx Whistler.
I tell you what, this is where we need to go and host the show for a week. What an amazing event. And some of these athletes, and look at the crashes there. I mean, geez, I tell you what, they've got no fear, have they? But it's just it's an amazing sport, I guess, as a whole, and everything they put on and what you just mentioned. It's just, it'd be good to go there.
Oh, it's gone off, Crankworx, that's for sure. Now, another interesting place to have a bike race was Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan. They had an international criterium featuring the great man himself, Chris Froome. Lots of money on the table. Most of it was actually to pay Chris Froome to be there to race.
Well, that's what it is, isn't it? You see he's wearing the yellow jersey from the Tour de France, so it's a big promotion. But, you know, there was a race at the end to be won. And, you know, it was Ed Clancy, I think, who took it out there. And you can see in the slow-mo, rider coming up on his left-hand side. But Chris Froome, thumbs up for him.
Thumbs up for him. Now, Scott Sunderland from Isaway Swiss Wellness Sports was third. Superstar sprinter, very fast, but these are the races, Macca, that he has to win. He can't be finishing third in these ones against riders like Ed Clancy.
Yeah, you're critical for good reason, because you're right. If he's going to step up into World Tour or higher ranks, he needs to win races like that. And we all want to see him do it, but that's how you get noticed.
Oh, we absolutely do. But let's go from Kazakhstan to Norway and the Arctic Tour of Norway, and an embarrassing moment.
You start to wonder. Oh, the bell's going, he does.
He thinks he's won.
Oh, dear.
He thinks he's won.
That was a bit embarrassing. He raised his hands, he started to see the bell ringing, and he put them down straight away.
Well, that was Truls Korseit, the 23-year-old Norwegian in his first year of the World Tour, and he'll certainly not live this one down for a while, Mac.
No, well, there you see, he got caught, swept up in the finish. I tell you what, those two fire trucks there, just sticking out a little bit in the finish run to the line.
And is the European champion that come away with this particular stage win, Alexander Kristoff. So on home soil, had a really good, powerful victory, as you would expect from him. But then stage 3, the next day, incredible scenery. And this is the sort of stuff we can expect when we see the World Championships in Norway earlier this year, or later this year. But have a look at this, a bit of argy-bargy.
Oh, and I'll tell you what, when you look at that vision, if you hadn't been focusing on who it was, you'd think, gee, it's Nasser Buhani.
Of course.
But it's not. It's a teammate of Nasser Buhani's. Maybe he's been getting some tips. Gee, two sides to every story though, Scotty, because apparently there was a little bit of sitting on there, so plenty going on there.
Yeah, there was. And the final stage was taken out by the guy that won the Tour overall. He won the first stage as well. Look, just amazing scenery that, as I say, we're looking forward to the World Championships coming up. But Dylan Toons, he won the first stage, got the leader's jersey and absolutely smashed them in this final stage to come away with a solo win.
That was impressive, wasn't it? What? And look at that, bow to the crowd. Gee, didn't he have a good week up there? Great memories for him.
Looking forward to seeing how he goes in the classics as he develops over the next couple of years as well.
These young guys coming through, I mean, we keep saying it every year, but they just keep popping up, don't they? And from everywhere, from all nations, European nations and outside. And I think that's what keeps this sport so exciting.
Now, we love a good victory celebration, but the governing body of world cycling wasn't too happy with Lars Boom. He won a stage last week in the Bink Bank Tour. And, yeah, the celebration at this point looks really good. And then they thought a little bit too offensive once he did this next little move, and they fined him 1,000 Swiss francs for it.
I was going to say, I thought that was a little bit too harsh, but apparently Mark Cavendish got fined a lot more for that by giving the two-finger salute. But, Lars Boom, he's had a quiet year, actually, so I can see he'd be a little bit disappointed not to make the Vuelta squad, but... I don't know. I'm 50-50 on that one.
Well, that's what it was all about. He was absolutely just livid that his team didn't select him for the Tour of Spain, and that's why he did that salute. Cost himself 1,000 Swiss francs. But when we talk about the Tour of Spain, the Vuelta, you're heading over. Chris Froome, he's tried a few times to win it in the past. He's finished second on a number of occasions. Now, this is him winning stage 11 last year. He lines up again. The man in red is Nairo Quintana, who won the Tour overall last year. He's not there. So will Chris Froome be able to get the back-to-back and do the double, the Tour de France and the Vuelta?
I tell you what, for the sake of him, I hope he does, because he's dogged, isn't he? He's determined. For a guy, coming off the back of the Tour de France, the guy who wins it, the pressure that he puts on himself, and now he wants to back up again at the Vuelta. So whatever happens, it's going to be a fantastic battle, because there's that many. It's stacked full of GC guys, so it's going to be a great race.
It is, and we'll have a look at the overall contenders in just a moment. But another rider that we're looking at, specifically because he's in an Australian registered team, it's the two brothers in particular. This was Simon Yates last year that picked up stage 6. And he did a good Tour de France earlier this year as well. Adam Yates, his twin brother, was 4th in the Tour last year. So the twins will be lining up for our Aussie registered team. And, of course, you've also got Esteban Chavez. So 3 good riders from that team.
Any 3 of them could actually win the Tour of Spain. It's pretty impressive for Orica Scott. They're taking a solid team there, and again, it just shows how good it's going to be. But look at the Australians as well, and Adam Hansen, isn't that a great story?
18th straight Grand Tour start for Adam Hansen. These are the riders that have ridden Grand Tours before that are lining up, and now this list is the debutants, the first time these riders have ever started in a Grand Tour, which is fantastic to see some new names on the list. And of course, one of them is Chris Hamilton, who a couple of days ago sent this in, very excited about his first Grand Tour start.
G'day Full Cycle TV, Chris Hamilton here checking in from Girona in Spain. I'm heading off to the Vuelta today, in about an hour and a half actually, and pretty excited. Going to be obviously the biggest race of my life, and it's quite cool to think that this time 12 months ago I was preparing for Tour of Tasmania, but just goes to show what can happen when you stick at it. Cheers.
Well, good luck to him as well. He's a fantastic rider, and getting a start in this race in his first season obviously shows that the team are rating him highly. Now, the overall contenders, we spoke about Chris Froome, of course. He is going to be the outright favourite, but Vincenzo Nibali is really focusing this. Aru, Bardet, Chavez, Yates we've mentioned. Who do you think?
Oh, it's anyone's pick. I tell you what, Aru's good, Bardet, Nibali, he obviously missed the Tour de France this year. It's anyone's pick.
Anyone's pick. Looking forward to it. It's always a great way to finish the Grand Tours of the year, the Vuelta a España. Up next, though, Jonathan Cantwell comes in to talk about, well, health, really, and what we should be really paying attention to him. Welcome back to Bike Bug Full Cycle. Now, this week's guest has a very important health message to all the young men in Australia, around the world. But firstly, Jonathan Cantwell, welcome to the show. We're going to recap your racing career first because, well, it was good. You rode the Tour de France, Paris-Roubaix, and had some really good success here in Australia.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Scotty and Macca. It's nice to be here. It's a bit of a different position here compared to last time. So, yeah, my cycling career was good. I raced for about 10 odd years as a professional, and then obviously we sort of went into a little bit of a health battle around about April time last year, and and sitting here now, it's nice that I'm officially in remission. So I got the clear about 2 weeks ago, so I'm excited about that.
Well, let's talk about that exactly then. So, look, we're looking at some fantastic footage of the Tour of Murray from years ago, where you completely dominated this particular race, unbeatable basically in the bunch sprints. Now, but we're talking about testicular cancer. So you've gone from that, being a superstar athlete, to fighting for your life.
Yeah, I guess it was a bit of a snowball effect where, racing had a high level for so many years. And then once I sort of stepped away from racing as a professional and then getting diagnosed with testicular cancer was a bit of a, it was a whirlwind. And it happened so fast. So, with 1 minute I'm sort of normal and fine, and I was still doing some triathlons and Ironman stuff just to keep fit and healthy. Then all of a sudden going to the doctors and saying, booked in for surgery about a week later. So it was quite, it was a change.
Can we just go back for a second? And I think it's interesting to tell people like how you actually discovered it, because it was you yourself, you said, you were the one who said, hang on, something's not right here.
Yeah, it was it was a little bit weird actually, because I was literally just self-discovered it really. There was no sort of pains, it wasn't difficult to ride a bike, it wasn't sore and things like that, and I kind of just went with my gut feeling. Being an athlete and a rider for so long, you know if something's not quite right with your body. So luckily I did listen to myself. I did go to the GP. But another part of the worst part of the story was he said everything was going to be totally fine. It was more like an issue with bike riding and sitting on a saddle so small for so long. And again, I went with my gut feeling and requested I got an ultrasound. So, so the story continues on with not listening to the GP, going with my gut feeling again, getting an ultrasound. And then once the ultrasound person basically came back with some results, it was not looking too good. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned cycling and how the GP thought perhaps that there could have been a connection there, and you've had lots of people actually ask you that. What do you think it was because you were cycling? Yeah,
it's been a huge reach, and I think everyone sort of asks themselves, does cycling contribute to testicular cancer in any way? Because you're sitting on a small saddle for a long period of time, but there's no real connections whatsoever. I've seen some of the best specialists in Australia. There's no history with cycling and testicular cancer whatsoever. So, I don't believe there is. There's no scientific proof or anything like that. So, everyone should keep riding their bikes. That's for sure.
We look at this vision of you, and you sit here now, and you're telling this story, and as you said at the start, you're in remission, so things are good. You feel very lucky, because when you're a cyclist, you don't think about much else, do you? And now, what you've been through, I guess, in the last few years, do you still sit here now and think, gee, I'm one of the lucky ones?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. So, I had a nice career, with the tour and all the other races that I had the opportunity to perform in. And then sitting here now, thinking how the tables have turned, really. And absolutely, I'm super, super lucky to be here, because once we sort of went through the surgery and the procedures and things like that, then they discovered it was actually a 4.5 centimetre seminoma tumour that had developed down there. So, going through that, not believing it, and then coming back with the results as sort of graphic as it was, and how big it was. So potentially there was around about a 6 to 9 month chance, if I didn't actually detect it, that I may not be probably sitting here telling the story.
And there's a particular age bracket that really fits with this particular type of cancer, and it's when we're really feeling invincible as young men.
Yeah, so obviously you don't really think about the whole side of cancers with certain. There's so many different types of cancers, it's unbelievable. So with this particular one, they do call it the young man's cancer. So there's sort of like an age range between 18 and 35, 36 that it's more predominant that you're going to have a chance of catching that cancer. So for me, the prime age was 34. I was literally 34 in maybe 2 months. Then I got diagnosed with cancer. So there's definitely a young man's cancer, and from post sort of like 40, you're kind of more in a clear, and then it goes on to different types of cancers and things like that. So yeah, it's a young man's cancer, they say.
Well, now you've teamed up recently with a former superstar as well of Australian cycling in Matthew Goss, winner of Milan San Remo, one of the monuments. Tell us a little bit about that collaboration you've got with Gossy.
Yeah, it's nice. Matt and I have been friends for our whole careers, and as everyone knows, he's an absolute superstar and one of Australia's greats. So look, Matt's very similar to myself, where we've both retired. We've sort of got our teeth into some business now, and it's nice to be involved with the cycling industry still. So we support the local industries, we support cycling to as much as we can. So yeah, I launched a brand called Speed Pro, which is predominantly carbon fibre products. And Matt's sort of got some spare time on his hands now, and so he's got his teeth and his claws into the brand. So we're sort of looking after Australia at the moment with some really nice high-end carbon fibre products. You've
taken about a minute. Get over what I've just had to deal with, and then you're straight back into it. So you're still very motivated, obviously, and obviously you love the sport.
Yeah, absolutely love the sport. Super motivated still. Us sprinters, we're a little bit sort of born differently with, we're always chasing after something. So, into the business thing, we can't sit down and lie down and wonder, what should happen. So we're after it, that's for sure.
Well, thanks for coming on, and look, it's fantastic to see you.
Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Very good to have you.
Yeah.
Don't go away though, because after the break, well, we'll talk to someone else that's gone through a transition in their sporting career as well.
Well, the most important thing before you get out on the bike is helmet selection. It's the one thing that will literally save your life. And when it comes down to it, the most important part of a bike ride. I've got a good selection here. We've got the Met helmets that have been around for quite some time. Casques, they're fairly new on the market. But this gyro here, this is to me probably one of the most safest helmets that you can wear and buy before you go on a bike ride. It's got a new system called MIPS. It's multi-directional impact protection. What it basically does is it's got an insert in here and it reduces the rotational force if you are in the unfortunate accident. It's got a rock lock system at the back that can tension or loosen the helmet around your head. Great ventilation, nice and chunky at the front as well, so they protect the front part of your head. But one thing that's important as well, wearing it correctly, and it drives me crazy when people do not wear their helmets correctly. You put it on, they've all got the same lock system there. There you go, do that up. That's a little bit loose, so I'm going to tension that as well, tighten it. And then these buckles on the side of the head, you can push up just up under the ear. That's where I like to have them, and it generally keeps your helmet nice and firm on your head. See that minimal movement, forward or back, I'm ready to go. And at the rear, then you can switch that rock lock, get the tension right. Very little swivel. It's a one-piece mould as well, which also makes it stronger on impact.
Well, good tips, David McKenzie, but it's incredible to think that from up until 2003, I was actually racing just in one of these things. That's all we had to use in professional races at the top level in Europe. Ridiculous. Now, there's been plenty of people that have made transitions from other sports into cycling. Not too many have done it very well, though, but former triathlete Jesse Featonby certainly has, as he's now moved into the National Road Series.
2015, started the season, fully focused on making Rio triathlon team for Olympics, and got my first World Championship start on the Gold Coast. Was really, keen to have a good, successful season, but a string of injuries just sort of plagued that whole season. When I first made the switch, I just did it out of enjoyment. Like, I love riding my bike. Triathlon was, part of my life for such a long time. But I didn't actually enjoy the swimming side of it. Like, it was something that I was struggling at, had to work really hard. First National Road Series at Tour of King Valley was such an eye-opener. Like, racing with 100 guys, fighting for every position, was something I wasn't used to. So just, surrounding yourself with the top guys and learning from them and, trying to improve every single race. National Capital Tour was my only second NRS, and I knew the course would suit me somewhat, and you just had to be in the right position. And thankfully, my team at the time, put me in the right spot, and definitely, showed myself on the climb. I've been fortunate enough, like my whole sporting career, to have some great family, support. Dad's, a great Australian cyclist. He competed for a number of years, still rides his bike all the time.
This is the pole rider. That's a strong launch. Oh, how confident was that?
And my sister, who's an absolute freak, the way things that she can do or she can perform with her body, to be on that Australian Ninja Warrior was such a cool achievement for her and a reward for all her hard dedication. Triathlon being an individual sport, you've got your own individual plan and what you're focused on, but cycling, you've got so many things that come into play, whether it be team role, team tactics. Obviously, sometimes it may be in your benefit, you've got a whole team behind you to help reach your goal.
It's a great story, that, Scotty. I know his dad, and from growing up in the northeast of Victoria, a great family, as you can see. And I tell you what, the sky's the limit for Jess Featonby, I think, and let's hope so.
Oh, it certainly is. Now, unfortunately, this week we lost a great Australian cyclist in Stephen Wooldridge, 4 times world champion, Commonwealth champion and Olympic champion as well. And he's a good friend of mine, and everybody within the high performance program at Cycling Australia and the AIS, as it was called in the past, have been absolutely rocked by the circumstances around the passing of Steve, and I really do think that this is going to be a big eye-opener, the catalyst for some change moving forward. This is Steve and I last year. We were talking about where he was at mentally only 12 months ago, and it really saddens me to know that in the end he didn't really want to be around any longer. So this is Centennial Park earlier in the week. They did a lap of silence of Centennial Park. 70 or so riders from all the different clubs up there came together to do a lap of silence, and to see 70 riders riding silently around Centennial Park in memory of a great person is a fantastic thing, and it really is a big wake-up call for all of us from the High Performance program. So a very sad time this week for all of us within Cycling Australia. Don't go away, more to come after the break. Welcome back to Bike Bug Full Cycle. Now, commuting by bike, it's really on the up and up. Not quite as good as it is in the Netherlands. And Dave McKenzie, I know you've been to Utrecht, which has one of the most incredible bike parking facilities.
It is impressive. We did a story on it a few years ago at the Tour de France, and I tell you what, the way they've got all the bikes are barcoded in and out. It's incredible. As you can see, look at the racks. It's just phenomenal, directly under the train station.
I'm sure there's a speed limit in there, and that's probably too fast they were going. 6,000 is the capacity of the bikes at the moment. They're going to build that to 12,000 by next year. So incredible, that's for sure. Now, a lot of those bikes probably have been left out in the rain, and their seat posts would be jammed in and very hard to get out. Now, Stephen Hall from Western Australia, who's over in the States, come up with an ingenious way to get his stuck seat post out. Got it out. Tied it to a tree.
Excited about it too.
They were. I was just waiting for someone to lose an eye, but he got the seat post out, so they were happy. Don't recommend this one. Don't do this at home.
No, don't do that. No, crazy. It worked.
So good on Stephen Hall for that one. Now, of course, this week is the release of All for One, the documentary on the Orica Scott, or the Green Edge team as it started. Dan Jones is the main man behind it, and it's certainly going to be a fantastic documentary. Have a quick glimpse of it right now.
Every team goes into the Tour de France wanting to do something.
Well, is this the day that Orica Green Edge claims the victory they've really wanted?
Fingers crossed.
How are they going to go?
It was like the Titanic hitting the iceberg.
I thought we were going to be the only team ever kicked out of the Tour de France.
Well, as we now know, they weren't kicked off the Tour de France, and the bus getting stuck at the finish line gave them global exposure. They backed it up with some good results, and I cannot wait to see that.
Well, of all the teams, I don't think any team have had everything that has happened to Orica Scott. The only thing they haven't done is won the Tour de France, but this doco, I think, will cover so much, and it'll be really good to see.
Hearing really good reports about it as well, and from other people involved in sport, not cycling. So
it's different. It'll be different. That's what's, I think, going to be good about it.
Well, good, thanks for coming on again, and I know you're running off to the airport to get to the Vuelta a España.
My mind's left. I'll send you some happy snaps.
Looking forward to another dose of European sun for David McKenzie. It's unfair. Check us out on social media, though. Full Cycle TV on Facebook and Twitter. We'll see you next week. We'll leave you with some great vision from the Arctic Tour of Norway. See you later.